Welcome, everybody. A very warm welcome to everyone to the Rising Network. And today, the 8 most common misadventures entrepreneurs make that our guest speakers today, Lucy Rose Walker and Gayle Mann, will be sharing with us today. So today, what we'd love to talk to you about, I just going to welcome, so I've done, starting off with our welcome, the agenda will be at 12:10. Gayle and Lucy Rose will be talking, and then there'll be some breakout rooms, and at 12:50 we'll have some questions and answers, and then at 1 o'clock we'll try and end sharply. So today, what are you going to learn? A little bit about why we misadventure when running a business, and the most common misadventures that they've experienced, observed and worked with, which should be really interesting, and then how to navigate some of those misadventures using techniques that you can really put into action straight away. And understanding that most of the things you're experiencing that no one talks about are perfectly normal. And that's something that I could definitely relate to. And I wish that this was there when I started my business. Hi, everybody. I've probably not even said hi. My name is Rosa dos Santos. A big wave and welcome to you all. Rosa dos Santos, who am I? I run my own business. I started in 2010. And I wish I had access to these two wonderful ladies and their story and about their journey. I've run a recruitment business helping clients build their teams, identify talent, and people identify their dream job. So that's a little bit about me, and then also the things that we're going to learn today. A little bit of housekeeping. This event is actually being recorded, so just smile when you're looking. No, I'm joking. You don't need to smile. We're going to focus on the speakers today. Keep your phones on silent, please, and make sure that your microphone is muted. If possible, otherwise we'll hear you sneezing and coughing. That's okay, just mute, that'll be good. And then of course when it gets to the breakout and the question and answer area, you'll be able to actually deactivate that out. Questions and answers will take place after the talk. To ask a question, please, we'd love to hear from you. I know the speakers would love to hear some of your questions, and it's your chance to, the things that you're hearing and listening, for you to write and note down things that you may have. So type the question in the chat box, and then they'll read out the question once the talk is finished. Select raise hand, and then wait for the speaker or facilitator to select you. So at this point, you'll be able to unmute your microphone and then ask the question. So a little bit about the Rising Network, if this is your first time joining us, and so welcome today, and hello to those that have been with us for a while. The purpose of the network is to really use the power of community to empower women to realize their true potential and to achieve balance and happiness. Now, I don't know about you, but I know when I joined in 2013, I was going through a little bit of a rough patch, trying to find balance. It was a really stressful period for me. And I was looking for that local safe space, people that I could meet. I don't come from this country. So trying to find meet your tribe, and you know what that feels like when you can really share things openly and get that feedback. And that's something that the Rising Network really created. And actually, it's something that Lily Cheng founded in 2012. And Lily Cheng is with us here today. And at her point in her life, she was looking for 3 key things: support network. She wanted to improve her well-being and upskill, sort of do more self-discovery and identify her life purpose. So one of those things might resonate with you today. And you're in a good place to, sort of join us on this journey. And in 2013, January, it was officially launched and actually creating the forum which we have today with the Rising Network for all of us to be able to enjoy. Now, the wonderful thing, how can the Rising Network help you? So here are little things that you can find. It can build your confidence. I mean, hello, I'm doing this. I wouldn't have thought of doing this a few years ago. So it can really help you build your confidence. Don't worry, we don't make you stand in front of the camera, but there's other things that you can practice and do, which will help you do. Access to unlimited networking events and courses. You can gain expert advice from like-minded people, and then create really meaningful relationships, improve your well-being and gain balance. And then even there's availability to create some and connect with some mentors, which a lot of people would love access to. So we've got a number of different chapters. I'm the local one of the Cambridge chapter leads. We've got some lovely people that are chapter leads. And I'm not just talking about myself. No, I'm talking about other people that are here as well. And the beautiful thing is that actually there's a number of chapters locally, and that there are emerging chapters happening at the moment. So Cambridge, London, and the US. And there are some emerging chapters. One is in the southwest of England, opening up a chapter in Germany. And the beautiful thing is actually now that we're online because of COVID, a lot of the events are happening online, but what a better way to connect with people all around the world, where it doesn't matter where you are, that actually to join some of these chapters, and hopefully we'll see other chapters physically when post-COVID. Communities help you connect and inspire, and sort of empower the women. You're able to collaborate and create something unique, which is what the chapters allows us to do. And like I said, prior to COVID, a lot of these were happening face to face, but now we have all of this online. So sorry, I'm just going to move to the next chapter. These are some of the wonderful women that are on as chapter leads, and there's actually, Lily said to me, actually these need to be updated. So there's a number of wonderful, friendly people that are there to help support and encourage others that are going on their journey too. So some of the events that take place at the Rising Network that you'll have access to is you can have access to networking and learning, some lovely masterclasses and social networking, and then the workshops that take place every month. The Rising Festival is an amazing festival that happens once a year, and prior to COVID, this is some of the photos from some of the previous events. You can see really well attended, and you'll have further information next year. There'll be an annual event celebrating International Women's Day. So the online learning platforms is a mastermind, masterclasses, and webinars, which will give you sort of some great learning opportunities. And then for about the charge of a glass of wine a week, if you think about what we spend on wine nowadays, you'll get the chance to have access to all these fantastic benefits by joining the Rising Network, where you can expand your network and upskill and develop yourself. And everything is free to attend. Once you've joined, there is no further cost, which is fantastic. So without further ado, let me hand over to the wonderful speakers today, about the 8 most common misadventures entrepreneurs make. Both of them are entrepreneurs themselves and mentors, and had a wonderful journey which they'll share together, and we might even get to hear about how they met. So over to you, Gayle, Mann and Lucy Rose Walker. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, Rosa. That was fantastic, and we're really delighted to be here with the Rising Network today. In terms of our own background, I'm Lucy Rose Walker, and I'm here with my co-founder, Gayle Mann. And just to give you a little bit of a background, we co-founded an accelerator program back in 2012, where we were starting out supporting about 35 entrepreneurs just to give them the kind of start, just to enable them to try and fulfill a passion that they had and to give them the opportunity to start something new. So we were supporting the entrepreneurs from the perspective of their mindset, and helping them from a psychological perspective, as well as giving them physical space and an actual accelerator. I'll sort of wind forward 6 years, and we had taken that accelerator from 1 to 13 across all 4 nations of the UK. We had a team of about 44, and we were supporting, or had done during the 6 years, about 4,000 entrepreneurs. We then sold that business to our corporate partner, which was Royal Bank of Scotland NatWest. And this is where the journey of the Misadventures sort of came to life, albeit they had all happened in the previous 6 years. For us, we kind of stopped and realized that we had been on this crazy journey for 6 years. But although we had gone into a room together and cried and laughed and done that with the many entrepreneurs that we'd worked with, we had never really publicly talked about what it actually felt like to run a business, and the highs and the lows, the extreme highs and the extreme lows that happen. And to just be honest about what that actually felt like. It's really difficult running your own business. It can be really rewarding, but it can also be really, really tough. So Gayle's just going to give you a wee bit of an introduction about what actually we mean when we talk about a misadventure.
So you can probably all identify with with the graphic on the screen, which is the difference between what you think it's going to be like in running a business and then what it actually looks like. And when we started Misadventures and we started talking to people about it, they say, oh, we thought we'll write a book and we'll do a podcast, and people are asking us what's the title, and we say Misadventures in Entrepreneuring, and virtually every single person goes, oh, oh yes, I've had some of those. It's like the wry smile and the chuckle. Everyone can identify with it, and it's such a forgiving word, the word misadventures, because the thing that we all fear the most as entrepreneurs is failure. And one of the big messages that we're certainly talking about in our book and our podcast is that actually being an entrepreneur is about failing all the time, but failing in the sense that you find yourself without any knowing how you got there in a completely different place to the place that you expected to be in. And that's okay. That's completely okay. Everyone does it. We've all found ourselves there, and we're going to find ourselves there again. We are going to be in the canyons or the bottom of the cliffs or under rain clouds regularly. And there are many reasons why that happens to us. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So why do misadventures happen? Well, they don't just happen. And that is one of our big messages, is we're not victims of misadventures. We are the cause of the misadventure. And that doesn't mean to say that we've done something wrong, but ultimately every time we find ourselves in a place that we didn't expect to be in is because there's something happening inside here, inside of our brains, and we've thought something would go one way and it hasn't gone that way, and that's mostly down to our mindset, our behaviours and our actions. So what is first, and you're all probably sitting there thinking, no, that's not me. I'm definitely not the cause of my own misadventures. That was because I ran out of money, or this person did this, or that happened to me, or COVID happened, or any of those reasons that we all like to think are why we did it. But let's run through what we perceive to be the 8 most common, and actually the list could be 18 most common, but we thought in the time we'll just cover 8 and see if any of them resonate. Okay, so reasons you're misadventuring. Number 1, you believe that your entrepreneurial journey should look different to what it looks like today. I don't know if anyone wants to wave at the camera if you think that when you started, you thought it was going to be this thing or that you saw on social media. Yes, I can see a great wave there. You thought it was going to be this thing that you see on The Apprentice or social media or Dragon's Den or any of these things. And then you got here and you're like, oh my God, no, this is completely different. Your perception of it is totally different from reality. And it happens to us all. Social media is an absolutely terrible reflection of entrepreneur life. In fact, if you go on Instagram and you hashtag like entrepreneur life or startup, and you'll get all of these people claiming that if you give them a little bit of money every month, they're going to make you a 7-figure business. And one of our entrepreneurs that we spoke to back in the days when we were researching our book said, The Apprentice is a blooming nightmare. Like the visions of these people that wear these fancy clothes and drive these fancy cars is not helpful to me when I'm riding through the snow on my bike to a meeting. So often we find ourselves in a real rut and upset and disappointed with our progress because we think it should look different to the way that it actually is. And we're kicking ourselves or we're beating ourselves up because we're not doing the thing that social media or tells us that we should be doing.
Yeah, for me, I'm just going to give you a little example, either from ourselves or from the entrepreneurs we've worked with after Gayle's talked about the misadventure. And this is an interesting one for me in terms of perception versus reality. When I became the CEO of Entrepreneurial Spark in 2016, there wasn't any great role models at that time that I really felt resonated with who I was. And so I was sort of left looking at, like, who should or what should a CEO be like? Like, how should they show up? And when, as Gayle says, when you look on social media, you hear things like extroverted or charismatic, or my least favorite one, have balls. And I'm just like, just made me feel really uncomfortable. And I was thinking, like, do I need to do all these things or embody all these things? I'm an introvert. That's not how I want to show up. And it wasn't really for me until I started working with a mentor, after feeling a bit uncomfortable about this, that I was able to say, no, I'm just going to be the authentic leader that I know I can be. I don't need to be like anybody else or like what the perception says potentially I should be. I can just understand exactly who I am, and that's the way I'm going to lead. And, you know, with the help of somebody else, I was able to achieve that.
So our advice is to you, first and foremost, if you're finding yourself in a place that you didn't think you would be, or an uncomfortable place, are you living under the misconception that your business is supposed to look different to the way that it currently does? So our second misadventure, and I was chuckling, Rosa, when you were going through some of the reasons why people join the Rising Network, and the idea of having a better work-life balance appeared on the screen there. Now, do not mistake this for us saying that being an entrepreneur we are not proponents of hustle culture. We used to talk about being always on as an entrepreneur. We now retract that statement, and we don't believe it. But we also don't believe that being an entrepreneur is about achieving, or the primary reason for becoming an entrepreneur is to achieve a better work-life balance. We don't really think that exists. And that being an entrepreneur is about a life balance. It's about finding a balance between the things that you need in your life at certain times, and balancing that out with everything else that you need to do. But I don't know how many times we met entrepreneurs in the past who we would ask them, why have you decided to start your own business? Oh, because I'd like to spend more time with the kids, or I'd like to, spend more quality time with the family or at home. And then you're fast forward 2-3 years down the line and you haven't achieved that. So if you're still waiting for that better work-life balance to appear, then her suggestion is time to look at what actually you need to balance in your life at certain periods of time. And Lucy Rose came across a quote from Randy Zuckerberg, that's the sister of Mark Zuckerberg, that we thought really summed this up nicely.
Yeah, Randy Zuckerberg, she actually went on to write a book after this article, and it was called Pick 3. You can have it all, just not every day. And I think that's quite a good way to look at it. And certainly for us, as we travelled around the UK on planes, trains and automobiles, and ate processed sandwiches and hotel breakfasts, and started to feel extremely guilty that we weren't doing enough exercise, for example, was just one of the things. And that's the problem. You end up with this constant guilt all the time. Whereas if you're just saying to yourself, today I'm picking this 3, or tomorrow I'm picking this 3, you don't have to have this balance all the time. And I suppose it comes back to that perception thing. It really is about your balance and what works for you. For me, in Entrepreneurial Spark, I chose that period in 6 years of my life to sacrifice other things and dedicate it all to running and growing that business. And, I was lucky enough to exit that and then have a different period of my life that gave me a different balance to take a bit of time off after that. So for me, it's like periods in my life where I get the work-life balance, but it's completely on your own terms. So I think it's just how you interpret it and what works for you. But the one thing here is just don't beat yourself up if you're thinking that you're going to be able to have it all the time.
Yeah, spending your whole life feeling guilty about not doing certain things is no way to live. It's certainly a misadventure. So if you find yourself feeling like that, then perhaps you've not quite got your balance right for that day or that week or that month yet. Okay, misadventure number 3. You aren't being true to your vision or your values. Now, I don't know about you, but values wasn't a thing. Like, my parents never really taught me explicitly, these are our family values. They don't really teach values at school. They're just something that you kind of figure out through trial and error through your life. And it wasn't really until I was at Entrepreneurial Spark that I actually like purposefully thought about what my values were. Instead, I just drifted through life with that, that feeling that you get in your stomach that something isn't quite right, or something feels magically right and you don't know why, or it's just this, it just feels uncomfortable. And what we figured out is, well, that's your values calling at you from a deep place in your mind or your body or your soul to say, this is in contradiction with what we believe. And it happens to us all the time if we haven't done that work on the vision or values. And we can find ourselves having hired somebody or having taken on a mentor or brought in an investor into the business, or we find ourselves, another one we see most commonly, entrepreneurs selling to customers that they know are not right for their business, but you're in that rock and a hard place between this revenue for my business and I really need this customer, and but I know they're just not right. And we've had a couple of examples in the past of entrepreneurs who've actually, we had one example of an entrepreneur in the past who actually gave up a £20,000 contract because she knew that the retailer that she was selling to would not represent her brand. So, but that's a really bold and brave move, and doesn't happen to us particularly often. But if you are finding yourself that gut feeling, this doesn't feel right, have a tune into your values and figure out what they're telling you.
Yeah, and for us, an example of our big and bold and brave decision was, I mentioned at the beginning, to allow us to grow. We had partnered with a corporate partner and grew across the UK. So as I said, we were in a position with 13 accelerators supporting all these entrepreneurs and a team of 44. And that happened over a 3-year period. And the other thing about vision and values is that they change. Your values don't tend to change, but your vision certainly can change. And for us, we realized that as a partnership, the two different partners, us and our partner, had a different vision and values as we moved forward after those 3 years. So we made the decision, although we were sitting in a very comfortable position, we had a 5-year rolling contract, that actually it was time that we parted ways. So Gayle actually has it in her book where we sat down one day and we wrote, we're going to press the go nuclear button. And that's exactly what we did, because we knew it was going to be really, really tough. And it was tough, but we knew it was the best. It was the best for everybody overall, and we haven't regretted it for a second since. But that was a decision that we knew we had to make. We couldn't sit there comfortably and just continue on when it didn't feel right for us.
And for us to get to that point took a lot of work in figuring out who we were and what we wanted. So both for us and for the business. And if you haven't done that work, then you can inevitably find yourself in a place where it just is generally feeling uncomfortable. So we're going to do one more and then we're going to break out and we're just going to have a chat, because I've seen nodding heads and waving hands and things like that. And so I'd love to hear from some of you about these things that resonate. But when I said at the beginning, often this is about us, the fourth one and the last one for this first part is that you are keeping yourself stuck. And this is a really blooming hard one to admit. It's like to take a right good look at yourself and say, you know what, I am the reason that I am stuck. I am what is standing in my way is difficult. And let me give you an idea of what this looks like. So my mother-in-law, her favourite phrase is, oh, it's hopeless. Hopeless. That's her favourite thing to say. Whenever something goes wrong, it's hopeless. And I'm very much, well, it's not it's not really hopeless. It's, you know, it's kind of a bad thing and it's going to mess us up for a little while, but, you know, it'll be all right. But for her, it's black and white. It's very black and white. The thing is that she was trying to do is not working, and therefore all hope is lost. You know, you may as well just tear it up and throw it in the bin. And when we say to ourselves these kinds of statements, then we keep ourselves in a place, we prevent ourselves from finding a creative solution to our problems. And that can range from something that's just a little bit irritating right the way through to, this is an absolute disaster, I'm never going to find my way out of it, you know, all hope is lost, I may as well just fold the business, I'm no good, my team is no good, my product's no good, my business is a nightmare, and you can wind yourself into a spiral. And the more anybody catastrophizers here, I'm a big catastrophizer, if something goes wrong, it's suddenly the end of the world. And we can do that to ourselves so easily. And it's not until you catch yourself that you can start to fix it. So there's probably a load of things that we're all doing every day that keep ourselves stuck. And it's all to do with the stories that we tell ourselves in our head. Now, everybody thinks that entrepreneurs are these magical creatures that are creative and rebels and disruptors and all of those things. But actually, your job as an entrepreneur is to be able to get yourself unstuck more than the other people around you. That is just, entrepreneurs are just the people that do this one thing better than anybody else. They overcome obstacles, they get over, under, round, through, whatever way it is, better than other people. That is your job as an entrepreneur, to be able to do that. But again, it's all about the stories we're telling ourselves in our head.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the best ways to get yourself unstuck is to ask for help, because often you just can't see it. You can't see those other ways. So you need to reimagine it, because it's pretty lonely running a business on your own. So it's, you know, going and asking other people to be able to support you is often a way to be able to find the answer. We had one entrepreneur and she was running an all natural dog business, biscuit business. And she just signed one of her first deals to produce 1,500 dog biscuits. And it was coming up to Christmas. And the next day, her manufacturer pulled the plug on her. So she was sitting with about 2 weeks to fulfill this order and nowhere to manufacture. So as Gayle said, she could have put her head in her hands, and she did have that moment of, oh my God, what am I going to do? She was in our accelerator, so she had other entrepreneurs around here, much like the Rising Network support group provides you as other people. And she just went and spoke to them and said, you know, what had happened. And she found herself on the 27th of December with 23 other entrepreneurs in a catering kitchen that they'd begged, board and stealed, and she was able to produce 1,500 and fulfill that order. But it was that ability, as Gayle said, to be able to reimagine, you know, how she could do this rather than just accepting that that was her stuck, but also looking for outside help as well. So being able to ask for those other ideas from other people, because often people looking in can see things that you just can't see.
And that's not to say, like, if you are stuck, you can't have a right good moan about it. I spoke to an entrepreneur this morning, and something really crap had happened to her, and she with the ever positive mindset, she went off searching the universe for how she can make herself feel better about the thing. And I said to her, do you know what? Sometimes you're just allowed to be angry, and you're allowed to say, do you know what? That was crap. But as Chris from the All Natural Dog Biscuits used to tell everybody that came into our accelerator, it's okay to do that. You've got 20 minutes, and then after 20 minutes, it's time to pull your socks up and move on. So, you know, if you are keeping yourself stuck, step one is being able to recognise it yourself. Step two is getting other people to help you to recognise it without getting really defensive that you've done something wrong. Step three is give yourself 20 minutes, and then step four, move on. Time to pull yourself out of the stuckness. So
Okay, so now we're going to break out into groups. There's going to be a facilitator in each room, and really it's just, has anything resonated with you? Is there any story or misadventure you'd like to share with the group, or anything that you would like to ask for help with? Let's go.
Everyone is back. This breakout room technology has hit or miss, I think, as we're all learning new virtual events. Okay, so what we didn't get much of a chance to chat in the breakout rooms because it was very short, but we're conscious of time and we wanted to rattle through. But this is sort of conversation that I'd love to continue with anyone that wants to continue. So if you do, then please share your details in the chat, and I will ask Victoria to to collect them, and we can continue that conversation later. So those first 4 misadventures were mostly about ourselves. And they're mostly about the things, you know, sort of self-inflicted wounds, I'm going to call it. But when we start to surround ourselves with other people, and in fact, Ruth had a really interesting point about a customer that's doesn't share her values, then we start to surround ourselves with other people. That's when potentially other problems start to arise. So our next misadventure is you've accidentally surrounded yourself with these people. Whoop, there we go. You've accidentally surrounded yourself. If you are having bother or uncomfortable conversations in your business, just ask yourself, is this person one of them? Are they an ego? Are they using their ego to try and drive my own agenda? Are they a shark who's only out to eat for themselves? People that you should surround yourself with in business, be that mentors, customers, suppliers, hires, employees, they should all want to see you succeed and not for their own gain. And so if there's anybody in your business, or in your life for that matter, that might fall into this camp, my suggestion is that you de-surround yourself with them, or you move on your relationships from them, because it really is okay to unfollow people in your life.
Yeah, for us, we had a couple of examples of this as we were growing Entrepreneurial Spark, particularly I suppose before we had grown out into the UK and we were in a smaller geography. And sometimes there's this idea that people sort of own the entrepreneurial space, and they own the entrepreneurs to a degree, and the ability to kind of look after them. And for us, it was just about collaborating. We were there to put the entrepreneur at the center of everything we did, and our only aim was to support the entrepreneurs that we worked with. But sometimes, unfortunately, egos got in the way of that. And we had some very well-known people that worked with us, and unfortunately, we regardless of who they were, we just had to decide that wasn't the people that we wanted to work with. We had one entrepreneur who we worked with whose phrase was, "He who has the pesos has the say-sos," and that just used to make us absolutely cringe. And it wasn't the kind of person that we wanted to work with. So it's tough sometimes because you're embedded in an ecosystem or a network, or you have certain suppliers, but it's okay, going back to those values again, to make that decision to say, do you know what, we're just not going to work together. So tough decisions need to be made, but you'll feel better for it in the long run.
Yeah, and just it was a really interesting question from Ruth that came in, that one of her customers who doesn't share her values is now trolling on social media, which is super irritating. And my suggestion would be just engage in this kind of way, in a way that is reflective of your values up until the point where you decide that you don't need to engage anymore, and just block them. And that might be easier said than done, but we can chat about ads. So then you can choose people to surround yourself. This is where things might not necessarily go smoothly either. So hiring, the first time you hire, the first time you hire in business, hiring is a really emotive, it's like the first big milestone, the first time you decide to take someone on board in your business. And what that doesn't need to be a co-founder, it doesn't need to be a full-time employee, it could be an intern, it could be a freelancer. And there are so many hiring pitfalls or hiring crimes, and these are just some of them that are up on the screen that are pretty self-explanatory. It's okay. Majority of us have all either left it too late to hire someone and then brought them on board in a real hurry when you just need them to do stuff and you don't have enough time to train them, and then that can all go wrong. Or we've brought someone on board too early, or most entrepreneurs are using really traditional hiring processes to bring people on board. I remember talking to one previously where we're saying, well, what is your hiring process? And she said, well, I'm just going to get some applications from Indeed and then I'm just going to do some interviews. And I said, what's that going to tell you about this person's ability to do the job? And she was using really traditional processes. And my response was, it's your business, it's your hire. You can make the hiring process any way you want to. So,
yeah, I think
this is definitely an experience that we've had in our business.
Yes, we've definitely committed every single crime going when it comes to hiring. People are your biggest asset, and I could just spend the rest of the talk today giving you examples of the challenges that we had and the pitfalls that we fell into. But I think I would just, you still hear me okay? Is that Gayle who's frozen, I think? Yeah, I think I would probably just kind of sum it up in the sense of just being really clear about why you're hiring and your expectations of that person. And being really clear with them, because it's a two-sided thing. It's about, do they want to come and be part of the world and the culture that you have created, and are they the right person to do as well? So I think for me, things like a culture book, I actually read one this week, and it was basically, it said, we are a cross between an employee handbook and a culture book, but they just kind of explained what their business was like what they were looking for people coming in, what their expectations were, and what they also didn't like as well. And I think no matter how big or small you are, you know, that rather than giving a kind of HR employee handbook, which is very kind of, you know, rules and regulations, just be really clear about what people are coming into. And I think that when we started to evolve that and develop that, that worked really well in terms of, because like I say, it's for us, interviews are two-way streets. It's got to work for both parties. You've got to understand what you're going into as the employee, as well as your expectations as the employer. So yeah, it's good fun, but yeah, it's the best thing at bringing people on. Are you still with us, Gayle?
Yes, sorry, this is here. I'm back. I know. On that note of culture and communication, this is definitely one where Lucy Rose and I found ourselves misadventuring a lot, and that is when the disconnect between what is happening in your head and what you've communicated with everyone else around you. So how many times have you thought, oh, that's why you and I are on different pages here, because I'm away over here thinking this, and I haven't brought you with me on that journey. And you know, we regularly now talk about, you cannot communicate your vision enough times. And you cannot communicate what is happening in your business enough times with your friends, family, partner, or anyone else that you think knows everything that's happening but doesn't really.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the point. It's about everybody in your life and bringing everybody with you. We've seen, really sadly, so many professional and personal relationships fall apart because people just haven't explained how they're feeling or what's happening or what's going on. And it's one of the things that we talk a lot about in our podcast, which is about checking in. And it's one of the things that we got into the habit of doing, but sometimes fell out of the habit on, which is just checking in every couple of weeks or every month as co-founders and just saying, right, how are you feeling? What are you feeling about the business right now? What's working for you? What's not working for you? How are things in our relationship? And just knowing that was always coming up as a regular conversation in the relationship just made it easier, even if you were bottling things up, to be able to voice that. And personally as well, we joked about it when myself and my husband got married, but that's something that we do every week as well. Just have our kind of check-in about how we're both feeling and what's happening. And it just gives you the chance to have that space to share, because there's not often times if someone says, how are you? You tend to just react, I'm fine, everything's okay. Whereas actually, if you've given the space and you're saying, how are you feeling? That's a different environment and it encourages you to share more. So I would encourage you to put that in with as many people as you can who are surrounding you and supporting you on your journey.
And one of the most powerful check-ins we ever had was when we, Lucy Rose and I over communicate. It's like ridiculous, but but we hadn't been checking in on the really important stuff, talking all the time, not talking about the important stuff. And one day we had a conversation that said, I don't really like this anymore. And that's a really hard conversation to have with your co-founder, but it was one of the most important conversations that we've ever had. So our last misadventure, and another thing that nobody ever talks about, and that is stopping. Not starting, stopping. How many books do you know that talk about entrepreneurial stops as opposed to entrepreneurial startups? None. This is the advice that no one gives you, which is when to call it a day. And we're not here to tell you to stop, but we're here to say, if you ever feel like you are hanging on to something that you know doesn't feel right out of a sense of duty, either to the business or to some people in it or to your friends or your family, then our question to you is, what if you just stopped? What's the worst that could happen if you just stopped? I guarantee it will not be as bad as you think it will be. And if you think it's going to be really bad, you can play the what if game, and you can model out what the really, really bad things are. But no one gives you this advice. No one wants to tell you that maybe you should just stop, and that's okay. And maybe, and everyone is so fearful that if they do stop, you'll be classed as a failure. But what if you just purposely decided not to do it anymore? That's completely okay. And you can do that with your business. You can do that with a product or a service. You can do that with a customer. Sometimes just deciding to call it a day is one of the best things you'll ever do. And we did a good example of that, which was with an entrepreneur we spoke to recently.
Yeah, and I think the thing for me about this is everyone used to say, what's your most successful business in Entrepreneurial Spark? Like expecting me to talk about the person who'd raised the most investment or the person who was turning over the most money. But to me, my answer was always about everybody's version of success is absolutely different and it's completely personal to you. You set out your vision, you know where you're headed towards, and you know what success looks like for you. So it's not getting caught up in somebody else's version of success. And we had an entrepreneur, as Gayle said, that we spoke to for one of our podcasts recently, and she'd grown as, in her idea it was successful because she'd started running dance classes for children in a city, and she started to grow that business. It was going really well, and she was like, how do I scale this? Okay, I franchise. She started franchising, brought on a team of people, and she suddenly realized that she was just traveling all over and just spending all of this time away from home. And she said, this is not what I enjoy at all. This is not my idea of success. And so she decided to call it a day and closed up that business. But what she had done is realized that she was really good at marketing the business, and therefore she was good at marketing in general and knew how to help other people. So she went on to create a marketing business, which has been very beneficial in the pandemic, because obviously you can run that from home versus dance classes, which you can't. But ultimately, she knew that it didn't feel right for her. So she called it a day and went on to do something else. And you know what? That is totally fine.
Yeah. And all the fear she had around that, when we asked her, it was maybe only 2 weeks later how she felt, and her overwhelming feeling was relief. So all of the fear that you have over how you're going to feel is inevitably overtaken after you've done it, with a sense of relief, particularly if it goes against your values and why you started the business in the first place. So those are our 8 misadventures, and most common misadventures in entrepreneuring. I can pretty much guarantee we're not going to jump into the second breakout room because we're a little bit pushed for time at the moment. So I can almost guarantee that if you're finding yourself down a track that you didn't imagine you would be in, then take a look back at the stories that you're telling yourself in your head and why things look different to the way you thought that they would be. But I think we are open to questions now.
Does anyone have any questions while we've got the 2 lovely ladies here? No? If not, I've got one. Okay, so Lucy, Gayle, if you were at that point where you're thinking about, I want to stop, but I'm not sure if I should stop, how does one go about that?
In terms of making that decision, and initially, you mean?
The whole process, like,
I think it's so for me it's about looking at the vision, as going back to why. Like, why did you start this business? What was it you hoped to achieve, number one, and what did you think your life would look like? So go back to those 2 and look at them and see where you are on a scale of 1 to 10 around those. And then the other thing for me really is around, like, we all have bad days, but are the bad days like considerably more than the good days? And kind of weigh them up as well. Like, are you just finding this as a slog? You're not enjoying it, and that's maybe 90%. And if you're adding all those things up, then you've got to question, well, why are you doing this? And it doesn't need to be a complete stop of everything. It could just be, how could I reimagine this business? And going back to the why you started it, how could I do it differently? Or it might be, do you know what? Entrepreneuring is just not for me. And that's okay as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. I would just echo what Lucy Rose said there about, and we go back to that idea of black and white thinking, that sometimes people think that to stop, I have to stop doing everything. And actually there's maybe part of it that you're really not enjoying, but there's part of it that you might be enjoying. And so how could you take yourself away from the things that you're not enjoying and focus on the stuff that you are? And that might mean you, as Lucy Rose said, reimagining it a little bit, but it doesn't have to be that black and white stop or go.
Yes, yeah. We recently did a course and one of the modules was about kind of keeping it really simple, because I think as an entrepreneur, I don't know if anyone can relate to this with me, I've gone on this journey and it starts evolving and you think, okay, it goes down so many streams that actually keeping it really simple and back to why you set it up gets rid of all of that noise and clutter, and then it means you streamline all of your systems, processes, and what your outputting is.
Yeah.
But that was a good reminder. I mean, I've been doing this for 5 years now, and it was only kind of like the light bulb moment was a few weeks ago when we had the module was, I just need to go back and keep it simple, which I think has really helped me to kind of keep focused on why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, and customers are a great way to find that out as well. You might think they want 6 different things, but actually they think 2 of the things you do are amazing. The other things, you know what, they can live without.
Yes, yeah. So we've got another question here. Is that you, Rosa, about partnerships? Mm-hmm. Oh, this is a good one. Do you ask away?
I was just curious because I've heard lots of nightmare stories about partnerships, and some work, some don't. So how do you know it's going to be a good partnership? How would you tell whether going into business with someone is a good fit?
I think we talk regularly about partnerships, and any kind of partnership, whether that's corporate, whether that's investor, mentor, whatever it is, it's like a marriage. You're getting into bed with someone quite intimately, and you wouldn't walk down the aisle with someone without finding out that they leave their underpants on the bathroom floor, cap of the paste. You got to do your diligence. That's annoying. So I'll just keep going, if in case I haven't. So values, back to, do you share the same values? Do you share the same vision? Those are your very first stops, and then after that, it's about can you work with this person? We had a conversation, Lucy, the other day, didn't we, about your work self. Like someone asked us, should I start a business with a friend? And we're like, well, your friend self and your work self are two very different people. And now that we're all working from home, we're all probably, if we've got partners or husbands or wives sitting, and you hear them in the next room and you're like, wow, I did not know you were the let's just stick a pin in it guy. Work with someone, test it out first. You can do that.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great advice. Thank you so much.
I'm not sure, but we have got 1 minute left. If everyone's happy to stay on for a few more minutes, or if you need to go jump off, because I see that Dawn, you've asked a question, which I think is really important. Dawn, do you want to ask away? And if you're happy, if you've got to go, please jump off. But I think if you're all okay, we'll stay on for a bit longer.
Well, I'll unmute for a bit, but I know that my microphone is weird, so if it starts getting resonate, then I'll just keep typing. But I like what you say about learning from failures, of which I've had quite a few along my journey, and it's trying to turn those into benefits. So I just wanted to have any other ideas where you can turn disasters into sort of, PR crises into a benefit for the business. That'd be really interesting. I'll unmute now because my microphone's funny.
Yeah. Ultimately, and it's cliche, but it's what did you learn from it? And I think sometimes there's a danger to be like, I've failed, I'm going to stick my head in the sand and just run really fast from it. But it's kind of thinking about, well, like, how did we get there? What actually happened that led us to get to that point? And what could we do differently in the future? And I think out of failure comes such amazing learnings that people then implement further on in the future. But it's kind of understanding, going back to what we talked about, is that why did you start? So it's looking at why did you start the business, and that failure might have just been because you didn't get the solution right the first time round. So it's thinking, okay, well, what pain point was I trying to solve? That solution maybe didn't work, but there might be another solution that I could find. So I think it's about picking yourself up, learning from what has happened, and then not letting it hold you back. Yeah.
I would there's two very quick points for me. First of all, I think it's really easy to get disheartened about failures. But like, if you're not trying anything new, then you're never going to progress. We've all got to try stuff, and we've all got to push ourselves out our comfort zone to move forward. So sometimes it's just reframing it as that experiment. It didn't prove to be, it didn't, what we thought would happen didn't happen, and that's that experiment closed, time for another one. The second I would say is if the failure is something that happens to be quite public, then potentially, then I would say own it is the best thing that you can do. If you have done something wrong and it's public, then to bury your hand and shy away from it is possibly the worst thing that you can do. I had a particular PR business that I work with that ran a festival of PR recently and was called out really publicly for not having a diverse or inclusive panel in one of their public events. And she actually took the opportunity to say, right, okay, I've totally put my hands up to that, and I own that. And I'm going to use this opportunity to have a discussion about that in our industry. Brought in experts to be able to do it, and created a whole manifesto to transform their industry around it. So owning it can be really powerful, depending on what it is. My connection's terrible, I'm afraid.
Okay, we got most of that. Oh,
Hope
Rosa.
that helped on.
So sorry. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and experience over the last, many years that you've been building your businesses. And there were some fantastic comments actually that we've had over here. So Sonia said, completely agree with everyone's idea of success is different. And that links really well with what you said earlier. Know what you want. She found this really useful. Rebecca Fordham said, thank you so much. It was really informative, a lot to take away, and I'll definitely be following up with some things and joining the group. Thanks all. I want to make sure. Thanks, Lady Hettel from Cambridge Plants. Thanks, ladies. A very refreshing way of looking at the challenges of entrepreneurship, and I have a lot of food for thought. I'll definitely be following up, which is great. You've made the journey not seem so lonely, because I think that's the one big thing, isn't it? Like you said, is to be able to have that sounding board. Dr. Minya, she said, hi, thank you, Gayle, Lucy, Lily, and the team. And I'm reading mine one of these nightmare stories. I really appreciate this presentation, which resonates on so many levels. Thank you, Dawn, for that message for the ladies. And I hope I haven't missed anyone. No, I think I think we've got everything. So I'm going to share the last screen. Thank you so much for sharing your journey that you've both been on, and actually looking forward to reading the podcast, listening to the podcast, and reading your book, because you've given us some very useful tidbits. So I'm going to be sharing the last screen with us, and which is over here. So forgive me. Right. So over here, for all of those that are still with us today, this is one of the wonderful seminars that you've attended today with Gayle and Lucy Rose to hear about their journey. But we've got some other wonderful events coming up as well. So we've got the online masterclass, which is up next on the 27th of October. And that's how to stand out in a tough job market. We know there's a lot of people that are struggling to find work, and there's that worry. So please get them to sign up, share, have a look, go to therisingnetwork.com, and you'll be able to find that network. We've also got a wonderful 4-week online course about communicating with confidence. That starts on the 3rd of November, and that's till the 24th of November, which will run every week. And so please join on that, again, on the risingnetwork.com website. And there's another masterclass on the 1st of December, which is a project risk management in volatile times. So look forward to seeing you at some of those events. Of course, these will all be online classes, but of course this gets updated regularly, so do have a look at that. So join the Facebook network, the Rising Network Facebook group. It's free to join, so please do join on there, and you'll get some wonderful, the featured members are every month. There's 3 featured members. You've got 3 of them there, and every day they'll be sharing some motivational tips, or there'll be some show and tell and a fun Friday. So join the local community. We'd love to see you on there. And of course, there's going to be feedback that we'd love to hear with you, which you'll be receiving shortly. Thank you for joining us on this discussion today. And thank you so much to Lucy Rose and Gayle for joining us today with the Rising Network. It's been wonderful to meet you both and see you all here. So we'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Okay. Bye.